After trying for a baby for 2.5 years and finally getting pregnant, I realized that I couldn't do it all. It started with really bad morning sickness that lasted more than just the morning. And then I had to slow down to allow my body to rest. I was a professor and a director of a program. And at the time, what I didn't tell people was, now you know, I took naps in my office between classes so that this professor could actually make sense when I'm in front of people. Why? You know this, it's because our bodies, at the time my body, is growing this incredible human being. And yet, I still thought that I was going to be that mom who's going to be answering emails as I get wheeled into that labor and delivery room. Then this beautiful bundle of joy arrived, and I was faced with a very demanding baby who seems to have a mind of her own, still does today, and doesn't seem to understand that I need space and I need sleep. I was so tired, I kid you not, I literally walked into walls. I was just so tired. So, sound familiar? You're not alone. So when time came for me to return to work, I put on my big girl pants. I went back to work. I put on a brave face, but I never shared my struggles. It was unprofessional, in fact, to talk about my family at work. Yet I struggled to meet the demands of my role as a director of a program, and the role of a mother, and of course, the role of a wife at home. So the fact is, parenting is challenging. I'm preaching to the choir, right? Everybody knows this. That Pinterest mom, that perfect cupcake, that beautiful home that we always see online really is not existent. Parenting is not easy. Someone once said to me, parenting is not for the faint-hearted. I agree. Do you agree? I think that parenting causes us to change in more ways than we can imagine. We're going to take a little pause and look at this graph in front of you. Okay, so what you're seeing, all these multicolors, as a result of 6 different studies on 2.1 million people worldwide. Let's look at this graphic. This tells me of the different studies. If you follow the different colors, these are all the individual studies. The 2.1 million worldwide basically involve 140 countries. And what they did is they took every single age from 16 all the way to 90, and they measure people's happiness levels. What it says right here, that's set before you, if for those of you guys who are girls who are tuning in and can't see it, I'm going to tell you what it says right here is that people's happiness levels are being measured. Now, when people are young, people feel great. So the positive emotions are high almost all the time. They experience huge levels of joy. And then something happens right around the mid-20s, and then it continues all the way to the 50s. And then there's a change. Something leaves and goes somewhere else, and then this happiness comes back. What is this? It is the gift of parenting. It's that time when we not only have to parent, we have to focus on our careers. We're trying so hard to survive and hopefully thrive as a family. What this graph tells us is you are not alone. That feeling of being stressed out as a parent, in fact, you're everybody. So where do we go from here? Well, life is shaped around defining and pursuing important goals. So when we know the goals and we achieve these goals, what it does is it gives us meaning, and it helps us to feel satisfied. It helps us to feel happy. But on the flip side, if goals that are set before us are not achieved, we get frustrated. We as parents, of course, we want to do a good job, right? But during this challenging time, parents are just overwhelmed. The demands from all directions come. It could be your work, it could be school, distance learning, it could be your kids. You know, kids just being kids and just needing that hand-holding and that help, whether it's emotional or physical support. Most working parents are used to dropping their kids off. You know, that's why we talk so much about going back to the workforce. um, our um, our feeling of being able to focus. We drop our kids off at school, and then with that single-minded focus, we go to work, we unwind, and then boom, we can actually work and achieve goals, the goals that are set before us, and we give our very best, and we're proud of it. But yet now parents are working from home, expected, and we're expected to continue to produce that same high quality work as if the other demands are not there. So I had asked some of my clients, how many of you had your kids make your special appearance on their Zoom session? Speaking of which, I do have a sign outside my door that says, please do not enter because mommy has a meeting, and I will apologize first if you see a guest appearance of my kids. Hopefully that will not happen, but be forewarned. Okay, we're expected to be able to first know our goals, right? And then second, having the ability to achieve the task that's set before us without much distraction. Yet we somehow have to manage right now our goals. This whole thing with the pandemic, we're constantly adjusting. We're constantly getting to know what our goals are. And our kids, I wish that they could just tell us, mommy, daddy, these are the things that you need to do, and go achieve them, and then we're going to be happily ever after. But that's not the case. The fact is our kids are constantly growing, and their needs are adjusting and changing as the age goes, as they grow. So because of that, we as parents are frustrated and stressed. Okay, so I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to ask everybody to chime in here. Do you have times when you have competing goals? So go ahead and mute yourself, or you can also chime in by typing into the chat box.
Absolutely, all day, every day.
And is this Rebecca?
Yep.
Thank you for chiming in.
Yeah, no problem.
Do you have an example of what your competing goals are?
I mean, it can be from anything to, okay, I want to make sure that I do 30 minutes of yoga a day, something like that. And then, of course, you try to do that, and your toddler, my toddler, either interrupts the session, or, okay, I say, I'll start it before he wakes up. And then, of course, that day he decides to wake up earlier.
Of course.
So
That's
yeah,
Murphy's
things like
Law,
that happen
right?
every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the fact is, we have our goals, and our kids' goals are doing this all the time, right? So the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is this. Another factor that contributes to our frustrations is really more of a biological and sociological makeup. Okay, we're going to take a pause and just look. If you can see on your screen, this is a report card, Madeline's report card. In fact, it is real. It's not made up. Well, obviously the screen is, but this is my colleague's daughter, Madeline's report card. She came home one day and she gave her dad her report card. If this is your child, Madeline's your child, you took a look at the report card, okay? And what is the first thing that you would notice?
Her math is not so good as the rest.
The math is not so good. Yeah. Yeah. That is That's the first thing. And then how would your conversation with her go? What would be the action? What would your action plan be?
I think I asked her like, what is she struggling in math, and then try to help her with that.
That's a really good insight. Yep. So the math is not so good. We automatically we get really concerned, right? So most parents would focus on that C on the page. It's because of how we're raised. We're raised to fix the weaknesses so that we can be more successful in life. We're taught and wired to fix the deficits. And in other words, we're trained to see the mess before we see the good. We're trained to see the bad before we see the positive. This, ladies, is the traditional schooling method. And that is very common all throughout the world. Now, let me switch into another scenario. Here's another example. When you get an email from your boss, sometime in the middle of the day, your boss just said, no details, but in that email, your boss just says to you, we need to talk. Anytime, do you have any time to talk at the end of the day? What's the first thing that comes into your mind?
Oh my God, am I in trouble?
Yes. Most of us think that, right? What happens if your boss just wanted to congratulate you on something, but it just was more of a big surprise for you? Okay, here's another one, the last one, okay? When a teacher calls home, all right, in the middle of the day, and you realize that you missed their call. And as you retrieve that voice message from school, asking for a meeting at pickup, okay, your teacher said, I just wanted to connect with you, be sure to stick around when you pick up Madeline. What's the first thing that comes across your mind?
I would think like did something happen to her? Was she hurt?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, so it's all the same thing. We are wired to see the negative before the positive. So this is because of what we have that's called the reticular activating system, or what I call the RAS. It is a network of neurons located in the brain stem, right in the back of the base of your brain. What the RAS does is it acts as a filter. So basically we have all sorts of information coming in all different directions all through the day. The RAS acts as a filter for the brain, and it takes in the most important information into our conscious attention. So back in the days, let's go back all the way into the very beginning of mankind, where our ancestors, no technology, where our ancestors are all hunters. That's kind of a survival mechanism for them. They learn how to sense the threat that comes their way. Basically, even animals coming that they're trying to hunt is coming their way and pouncing on them, they run. So this is what the RAS do. Now let's fast forward to right now. I don't think that we're really great hunters in that sense, but that RAS is still there. What it causes us to do is it helps us to key in on what we focus on. But the good news is we can actually retrain our RAS to see what we choose to see. So Theodore Roosevelt once said that do what you can with what you have where you are. I'm going to say that again, and you might already know this. Do what you can with what you have where you are. Okay, so basically what it says is this. What he says is this: whatever you're given right now, don't go thinking that you're going to be doing all the stuff that you wish, but you can get there with growth. But right now, what are we given? How do we get there? How do we get what we're given to flourish? Okay, this leads me to something that I'm super passionate about. We need to switch to strengths-based parenting. So I'm going to take a pause and tell you how I started with this journey. When I started my journey with strength-based parenting, I was having difficulty. As I said, I have two daughters. After my first daughter, you know, that you went through that phase of learning all the first, and man, when my second kid came along, I've got this down. I know what it means to be a parent. Nope. My second kid was the polar opposite of my first. And then I really struggled to connect with her because, truth be told, she is very different from me. And we all kind of jokingly say that that favorite kid of yours is that kid that's most like you. You know why? It's because you get that kid, because it's easy, because you can see and connect with your kid. But I really wanted to connect with my younger child. And so I started my search. What I ended up with was I found this thing that's called movement that's called Incredible Family Movement. I was introduced to a set of assessments that were a result of 60 years of studies on all sorts of parenting styles and all sorts of parenting research. And then I went ahead and took research that assessment for my child. Actually, I did that for all my children. And those are the assessments for the kids, and then assessments for me and my husband. It was eye-opening. I started to look at my kids through different sets of lenses and actually became a learner for my child. It really has enriched my relationship with my husband, my marriage with him, because that series of assessment actually helped us to become on the same page, and we started parenting through that. So this is something that I'm going to talk a little bit more about, and this is now what I'm doing with families, corporately, and individually, and actually like family coaching. So let's switch gears right now. As we learn to retrain our RAS and begin to spot the strengths instead of weaknesses, a good place to begin is to spot times when we get frustrated. Most people, once we start to pay more attention to that, we will start to spot the different times that we get frustrated, and then you see that pattern. Dr. Lee Waters, the writer of this book called The Strength Switch, she says, where your attention goes, your energy flows. So when frustration enters the room, when you get frustrated, it's better to mute it than to give it a microphone. I'm not saying you ignore it. You just don't go and give it a microphone and let it escalate. That's what I'm saying. So imagine this. You're trying to get ready for work. Your toddler is running down the hallway, thinking it's so funny, you know, and you're going nuts because you're running late. And so you grab your toddler and pull your toddler into the room and try really hard to get your toddler to change so that you can get breakfast ready and then hopefully out the door in the next 5 minutes. However, your toddler started having a tantrum. Then your frustration starts to grow and it spirals to this point where you start to yell at your kid, and you start to have those threats that, you know, just doesn't make sense because you're desperate and you're so frustrated. So we all have feelings of these moments of frustration. You're feeling it, I'm feeling it. It's something that we are all going through right now. And by giving our frustrations, that microphone will not help the situation. It helps you to feel better because you released it, but then I bet most of your parents feel really frustrated that you actually took it out on your kid. Venting all over our kids will not solve the problem. There are other places to do that. You know, it could be sharing your spouses, your good girlfriends, your family members, you know, for counseling, even coaching, or taking a walk around the block and getting some energy, blood going. but don't let your frustrations take over. I encourage you to think about this and be present and mindful. Good exercise that I like to tell my clients as we walk through frustration is, what happens is when you need to remove yourself from that room physically, where that frustration's going. Your kid's gonna be okay. Your kid's not gonna have any problem. Like if you just walk away for like a minute or two, walk and remove yourself from that space. Take a deep breath, count to 10. And if you're really, really mad, go all the way to 100. But breathe deeply before you return, and make sure that you actually connect with your child. What your child at that time will need is you, believe it or not, for you to be there emotionally to connect with your child. So choose not to have a parenting moment that you will regret later. Okay, so in the next moment, we're going to talk about some prevention strategies as well as protection strategies. But these strategies might not all apply to you. Some might be perfect for you, but I encourage you to take one that would actually fit you well. And I would love for you to take that and practice that after the webinar. Okay, so now we're going to talk about prevention strategies. These are the ways that you can stop the frustrations and stress before you get there. Later, we will all talk about protection strategies, but we'll get to that later. So prevention strategies. A very powerful thing that you can do is to align your children's goals with yours, whether they're big or whether they're small. One of you ladies that talked about doing yoga. An example of aligning your goals with theirs is, how about, besides doing yoga, consider doing a kid yoga. There are many examples of that. I think you can find them on YouTube. A client had told me that she really enjoyed this one kid yoga session she found on Amazon Prime. So go looking for those things. Okay, now we can talk about goals and all that stuff, but it's easy to talk about setting goals, but the reality is only 5% of people who set goals actually continue to do it. You might know your goals personally too, but extend that to your partner, extend that to your kids as well, and involve them in that. Do it in a form, there are many ways, but do it in a form of a family meeting. If your kids are small, that would look different from when their kids are a little bit older. But talk to them about it so they can actually learn from you. Even as little ones, talk in a level that they get it. And what is the goal that's going to bring everyone together so that you can work together as a team? A client of mine who has 3 daughters, two teens and 1 teenager. As we worked through this, her family picked the word grow. So no matter what happens, we're going to grow. So what they did was they found a little one of those signs, then they put on the mantle. Every time they see the word, they talk about it. They grow. They chose to grow in distance learning, in learning, and grow in their emotional well-being. And so sometimes, one example also again is she was busy working in her office, and then she came out. Instead of being out there doing the homework, the kids were watching TV. So her first question to the kids was, what are you doing here that causes you to grow? And of course, they realized that that doesn't align with their goals. And so they turned it off. Thankfully, they were on the same page on this. And so that's an example for you. So do a quick check-in and get an emotional pulse on everyone to see how everyone is doing from time to time, so that you can make sure that you're actually staying on target and you're still hitting those goals. Okay, second thing is do one thing at a time. So there is a great book called The One Thing by Gary Keller. He asked this question. It's a very powerful question. What is that one thing that by doing this one thing will make all the other things easy? I'm going to tell you what my one thing is. I'm not the most organized person, but my one thing is scheduling. So I make sure that everybody, including my kids and my husband's schedule, is on our master schedule. So I know, because I did the one thing for us for scheduling, it helps me to have a peace of mind with everything else. And if I drop the ball, my husband can pick it up, and he knows, because of the scheduling, what's for dinner, what is for lunch, where the kids need to go by a certain time. And so we were able to tag team on that. Don't try to do it all, really, honestly. You might, as you sit down to think about this, in your spare time, you might think about, wow, there are all these different things that I could do, but really find a common thread as you think about this, and find that one thing. How about finding one way you can connect with your child, and see how you can fill your child's bucket up each day, or even each week? One special thing that you can do that will help you to feel successful. The next thing is big rocks first. Remember that science experiment that we used to have, most of us had in school? We had some big rocks, there's some medium rocks, we had some fine sand, and then we're all supposed to fit it all in this big old jar. And by putting the big rocks first, we could fill in the rest of the spaces between the rocks with the smaller ones, and then eventually with a fine sand. So I encourage you to create a list that are full of things that are important to you and your partner. So take maybe a Saturday, half an hour, or even half an hour if you can't have spare as much time, and just really talk it through with your husband, and see what are important to your family, what's important to you, what's more pressing in your life, what are your priorities. And then as things come up that way, you measure up against these values and these priorities that you already have set. Again, my example from my family is dinner time. Dinner time is our sacred time where we connect with each other. No phones are allowed. Even if someone calls, we will not entertain them. And kids already know that. So if my husband and I forgot to turn off our phones and the phone rings, they don't even pay attention to it because they know we're not picking it up. Another one is family game time. We do that once a week. We try to do that once a week. Otherwise, it kind of flip-flops with family game night and movie night for us. Those times, again, are sacred times. We do not entertain anything. And in fact, sometimes when people would come and say to us, we would like to go hiking with you guys, maybe not a game night, game time, more game time, not at night. We would actually say no, because this is our time that we set aside for our family. The last thing is to focus on important, not urgent. So my example, again, is from an example from my family. I can think of that craft project your kid comes to you wanting to do with you. Your kid has asked it, multiple times. You might not be a crafty mom, but they made the effort to ask about it. So make time for that. Really sit down, schedule it in your schedule, so you know that you have that already planned out, and you can talk to your kid about doing it on this particular day. What it does is it helps your kid it builds hope for a kid and encourages your kid, because you can look forward to that. For you as a parent, it helps you to feel successful. And for a kid, your kid looks forward to that and is excited about it. And talk to your kid as much as possible about that. Can't wait to do this with you. Well, I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder what we're going to come up with. Say no to that, that post that you have, or writing a blog, because this is important, that time for you to connect with your child. And then life is going to throw you curveballs. You're going to get something out of the left field. So ask yourself, what are you focusing on? Where is your energy going? And how are you spending your energy? So another way of saying this is really to know what is important and be intentional about investing in this. So now the next thing we're going to talk about, right, is the protection strategies. Now, protection strategies is, when you say this, okay, well, thanks for sharing that, but I'm already feeling that stress and frustration. What do I do about it then? And how do I make it so that I'm not really hurting as much as it could otherwise? And how do I stop it? And how do I heal from it? Okay, well, in terms of protection strategies and prevention strategies, which one's more powerful? Prevention. Because, then it won't happen, but life happens. So we don't always get to prevent it, right? So let's talk a little bit about this. Even when we have our goals, sometimes our children do ignore the things that come up, and they come up, they frustrate us. So we need the protection strategy. The first thing really is take a pause. When you're all frustrated, you know that you're going to blow off your top, and what I'm going to ask you is this: take a pause and get a fresh perspective. Are you having a bad day? Or is your day awful, having a really bad day? Or did you only have 10 minutes of a bad 10 minutes? Just the other day, I was working and, having a really productive morning, finishing my emails. I managed to hit a lot of homeschool stuff with my kids, came in, hit a lot of emails, sent them out, got work done, felt really good. But I looked down, I looked at my clock, and I realized, oh my goodness, it's time for me to get lunch ready. So I went out there. I wasn't trying to make a huge buffet lunch for everyone. I just wanted to get food on the table and feed people. So I was making sandwiches, I put juice on the table, and we sat down. One of the things that I like to do is, no matter whether it's lunchtime or dinner time, we sit down and we connect. It doesn't need to be very long. It could be 15 minutes. It could be half an hour. Dinner time usually ends up being longer because we don't have things to get back to. But so I was sitting there at the dining table. I finished my sandwich and I was already getting up, and my mind was transitioning into the mode of the work mode, because I started to think about, okay, well, I've got all these emails that I need to answer. Who's more important? And so my mind was already there. However, as I got up, my 6-year-old accidentally spilled her cup of juice all over the dining table. I was really hoping to have a short lunch break, right? And of course, that messes up with my expectations. In hindsight, was it really that bad? I could have just wiped it up, but I was frustrated. So I walked out of the room after throwing the paper towel really quickly on the dining table, walked out of the room, and I just needed a new, fresh headspace, breathed, and then I went back there. I could tell when I walked back, my 6-year-old was trying hard to clean up her mess as best as she could. And I looked at her, my heart just went, oh, okay. My emails are not really that important. Those are just my expectations. I took a quick breath. We laughed about it, and then you know what I did was I told the kids, let's go around the block for a little walk. It wasn't a very long time, it was just 15 minutes, but I put my cell phone away, I put all the other distractions away, and I gave them my full attention. So uh, it, it really didn't feel like I needed again to go back, and so I was able to connect with them. Now, as a result of that, my kids didn't really try to come into my office. Their buckets were filled, and I'm happy to say that I actually became more productive as a result. Okay, so the next thing is learn your child and look at their strengths. This, again, I mentioned this at the very beginning. I'm very passionate about this. I had a client who came up to me about a few months ago, and she was stuck. She has 3 kids. She seems to be able to get along better with the first and the third, but the middle child was hard for her to connect with. She felt like she could understand the first and the third children because they're wired a lot more like her. And then that middle child just quickly became the oddball, because not only did she have trouble connecting with her, the other 2 kids in the family also had that trouble. But through coaching and a series of assessments, that I mentioned from before, I helped her to open up her eyes to that middle child's innate gifts, and as well as her husband's and her own parenting strengths. So there are 2 sets of assessments, the kids' assessments as well as the parents' assessments. So I am very happy to say that after a few months of coaching, the marriage really improved and the parents were able to connect with the kids. And not only that, the siblings were able to connect with their sister on a deeper level. And here's the last one. The last one is to practice meditation and mindfulness. Start each day. I know some of you might already be doing this, but start each day on a good foot. The first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes of your day is the most important. Set your intentions before you get out of bed. So start the first 5 minutes. It just is 5 minutes with gratefulness. Okay, what are you grateful for? And then start thinking about your day as it unfolds. So what this helps you is you will not be reacting. And if something happens, you can actually deal with it and respond to it. And then at the end of the day, think about your day, okay, reflect on the good moments. And then if you have things that you haven't done or that you wish that you've done differently, take a deep breath, acknowledge it, and then let it go. Because tomorrow, I guarantee you, is waiting for you, and you have another chance to give it another shot. Okay, so these are some really good tools for you. The key, though, is whatever you choose to do it consistently. Whatever you choose to do, it's almost like that muscle. It might be a little bit, it might take a little time for you to get into that swing, to remember how to do it, but the muscle will grow and develop, and it will become easier and easier. All right, so I think I'm over time, so I'm gonna finish with this. Babe Ruth. What has Babe Ruth got to do with parenting? Okay, if you're a basketball fan, you might know the story of Babe Ruth. He was a home run king. Okay, every time he goes to the plate, he wants to hit a home run. He wanted to hit the ball out of the park, but the reality is he hit 714 home runs and a whole bunch of base hits. And he struck out a whole lot. Every time he struck out, he went back again to try to make that home run. And he eventually became the home run king. That is the joy of having goals. every day we set goals before us, and every time we miss them, we get back up and get to do it again. It's frustrating for our kids sometimes to interrupt us, but it's even more frustrating when our kids are interrupting us when we're trying to go somewhere. But being an incredible parent means that you get to continue to show up and continue to work with them until that frustration goes away and decreases. So just like Babe Ruth, you keep going back again and again, and you eventually will hit a home run. And with that, I'm going to pass this on to Jin.
Yeah, thank you so much, Faith. So given it's a small group, if any participants have questions, just think of this as a free coaching session with Faith. Any questions for anyone? Please unmute. Well, you can type into the chat if that's easier. I'll start. So there's a private question. So the question reads, I'm with my kid every day. I think I know what he is good at and bad at. Why do I need to take assessment?
That's a very good question. Now, from one of the, this is a client telling me this. My client had said this, well, I thought that I knew my kid. I'm not saying that you don't know, because we parents, as parents, we know. What those assessments did was that it introduced